Welcome. Welcome to WPP House, or welcome back if you've already been here. Good afternoon. I'm Tom. I'm the CEO of VML in Australia and New Zealand. We are WPP's creative and technology agency, founded about 2 days ago, but been around for about 161 years. Figure that out. So we'll start with acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So I have the honour of introducing the presentation today. Today we're going to talk about Experience Next. So in this era of brands being more important and financially significant than ever, you can no longer risk a poor brand customer experience breaking a great brand promise, or the inverse of that. You can't risk a poor brand promise limiting a great customer experience. So today, with a little help from my three friends over there, we're going to explore how you can enrich your brand and your customers' lives with great brand experiences. So I'm going to welcome to the stage Mr. Miles Cox. He is our Chief Experience Officer and our Design Thought Leader. Go for it.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? So this is going to get loose. I hope that's all right with everyone. Yeah, it's Friday. It's lunchtime. Everyone probably wants to be outside in the sun in a beer garden somewhere, because I do. But let's do this first. So thanks, Tom, for that introduction. As Tom introduced me, I am all of these things. And you'll see that on LinkedIn and anywhere else on the internet. Chief Experience Officer, VML. I'm Mr. Weiner, Tom. Shit. Designer by trade and client and agency background, having spent some time with media broadcast at Fox Sports. But what LinkedIn won't tell you is that I was an idiot and had 4 kids. Twins, even. And it's a pretty big handful at home. I'm also a fantasy football legend, well, at least I call myself that, and a barbecue pitmaster in the making, and I'm cooking 6-kilo brisket on Saturday if anyone wants to come around. Today, Tom sort of said to me, what are you going to speak about? I said, I don't know. I really don't. What's interesting? What are we talking about? What are we thinking about? And some of the things we're thinking about in the last sort of 12, 18 months really is the experience era that we find ourselves in. So we've been through the awareness era through marketing, branding, etc., through the 40s, through the 90s. It was all about awareness, regard, reach, and frequency. We moved after that into the attention era, somewhat briefly, in comparison, for about 18 years, where it was about time spent, eyeballs, and engagement. And more recently, last 5 years, we've found ourselves in this experience era. Customer satisfaction, loyalty, and share of wallet. And you'll see part 1 there. We've only got 84 parts to go, so we'll be right, okay? Stay with me. And I thought, how do we start this? Big numbers are good, yeah? Big numbers. 91%, don't get much bigger, of customers are more likely to shop with brands who recognise, remember, and provide relevant offers and recommendations. It's pretty big. I mean, 91%. So customers have signalled what they expect of brands and those who craft them. So most of us in this room, they've told us that we want this. Nothing too hard to do, right? But is it possible, and where do we start? And we often start with a customer journey when we think about our customers, what they're doing. But considering the customer journey isn't linear and is often very messy, just like these pinballs flying around on the screen, and it's very different for every customer. Every customer wants something different, experiences are different, and at different times. So it's almost an impossible task to deliver on that 91%, isn't it? Because there's no single journey that we would like as experience makers. We sit down, we create customer journey maps, and we think, oh, this is going to be it for everyone. But it's not. We've got to take different customers' unique perspectives and needs into consideration. Not only that, we'll make it a little bit harder. 76% of US shoppers recently, in a survey I saw, use 3 or more channels as they traverse the many ways in which they can complete their task or tasks. Many channels, different times, it's getting harder, everyone's different. What do we do? I forgot to say, there are about 4.5 many devices in a day. In a day, they're using 4.5 devices in a day on average. Phones and computers, tablets and watches, and even voice assistants. The landscape is changing and we need to keep up. Another stat, it's not as big as the last one, but 84% of customers expect a seamless and personalised experience. So they're spending more time in more places on more devices, but they want a seamless experience. This experience here, let me tell you, it's hard work. The boundaries have blurred and the expectations of brand to meet those demands is higher than ever before. So much so that we often use this saying, if you like, that your last best experience is your baseline expectation for your next. So what I mean by that and what we talk about, or the examples we give, is that many years ago we'd be asked to do a competitor review. Who are we up against? What are they doing? Where are our gaps? What are we doing well, etc. That kind of moved to a landscape review. So the lens would broaden. We'd go a little bit wider. But now, how wide do you go? Because if I have a great experience here, digitally or otherwise, I expect that over here. So we've got to compete with everyone all the time, no matter what. Why this video that's playing? Well, airlines are kind of competing with streaming services if you think about it. From the experience on a tablet or a phone, from the interface and the UX, but also the content. So if I get on a plane, what have they got compared to what I can take? Planes are also got Wi-Fi now. How easy is it to connect compared to my Google at home or to work or to wherever else? I want that seamless, I want that easy. I have a high expectation of what that looks like. Planes have got it pretty hard because they're also competing with someone like hotel chains, concierges, like they've got lounges, they've got this experience that they're selling and it's in comparison to say the Hilton or someone else. So your last best experience is your baseline expectation for your next. Part 2. Scene set, take a breath. What does that look like? Well, it kind of stems with personalisation. I'll go into that. Gartner did some research a couple of years ago in which they said 89% of customers compete primarily on the basis of customer experience, so near enough 90%. So brands and businesses are saying, hey, that's where we want to spend our time, that's where we want to spend our money, because customers have got a high expectation. What I think the poster child of this era, this experience era that we find ourselves in, is the poster child is personalisation. Everyone talks about it. I haven't had the joy of spending a lot of time here this week, but I can almost guarantee you if you have, you've heard personalisation 182 times, probably a day. Most conferences do. And it's fair enough, because it's how brands, if we're going to recognise, remember and provide relevant offers and recommendations, we need to think about how we do that for everyone at the right time and meet them where they need to be at the right place. It's kind of an interesting thing when you think about it, personalisation, that over, let's say, the last half dozen years at least, there are many talks, conferences, I think even courses, people have whole jobs, and I'm sorry, the next couple of slides may upset you. It's okay, we're friends, right? But there's whole careers and businesses around personalisation. And it's been pretty successful. 3 of the biggest brands in the world providing personalised content. Netflix is famous for personalised content recommendations. It analyses user viewing habits and preferences and suggests content that meets that individual needs and tastes. Amazon does the same, but from a product point of view. Spotify does the same, but from a music point of view. I watch this, therefore this is probably going to be to my taste. I bought this, therefore I probably want to buy that, etc. We're all pretty familiar. Good news stories. Personalisation for the win. But this is a pretty big number. If near 90% of customers, 91% of customers expect great experience, 89% of brands are trying to provide that, but only 8% of customers say they have good customer experiences. I'll go back a slide. Instead of FTW, isn't it WTF? Sorry, little riff. I pose that personalisation has failed us. It isn't living up to the promise, and has even created frustrating experiences and even concerns around privacy. So there are some issues in the experience here around personalisation. Bad personalisation is even guilty of being a bit creepy, like just a bit weird. Well, how do you know that? I didn't ask for that. Why are you sending me wedding dresses? I don't even have a partner. Bit weird. Sometimes it's really, really inaccurate as well. Or you get stuck in filter bubbles, which I'm sure we've all experienced with, whether it be Netflix, TikTok, etc. We get stuck in these bubbles. YouTube particularly is bad for it, in which we only see this niche sort of bubble that they want us to see because of a couple of interactions. So I think, or pose, that personalisation has failed us, and maybe we as creators have failed personalisation. Even so, I kind of think that personalisation as it stands is basic. It's kind of bland, a little bit beige, a little bit... Oh, sorry, the camera guy, I keep moving, don't I? I'll go over here. I think it's an afterthought sometimes. I've been in teams in which we've thought, how do we provide something relevant? And it's often left to the end, or it's often left as almost a plug-in for that. We'll let the software handle it. We'll wait for later. We aren't thinking about that from up front. We aren't thinking of that as early as we should, and think about the various people we're crafting these experiences for and their needs. And I kind of think that if we truly live up to the promise of personalisation and deliver it in the experience era, then we need to turn things up to 11. We need to dial shit up. We need to get going. Get pumped. 3 Red Bulls isn't enough. So part 3, almost the last part. Experience next. So if personalisation is failing us, what does 11 look like? Well, I think it comes down to anticipation rather than personalisation. It's still personalisation, don't get me wrong, but it really is thinking about one step ahead of the customer and being there before they are. I've been thinking about this a lot, unsurprisingly, in the last few weeks and months, and talking to a lot of different people about it. And the way I've been sort of processing it is whether it's an assistant or a concierge, a coach, or in this case, a caddy. Thanks, John Bird, for the caddy reference. If we think about a caddy, caddies and golfers work really, really closely together. The caddy will know the read of the green, will know the fairway, will know how the golfer hits the ball, he'll know which wedge or driver they need at what time. They work together really, really closely, but the caddy knows the golfer as well as the golfer knows himself, and sometimes a little bit better. So how do we start crafting experiences that stay one step ahead? How do we craft experiences that know our customers and our users better than they know themselves? I think it's kind of cool anyway. Where I'm thinking of this going is where it becomes conversational between system and person, right? So often we get a prompt through push notification, hey, you should do this. But sometimes it's a dead end. Sometimes it's not really a question so much of a statement. What if our systems that we craft start to be conversational? That's kind of what I am thinking about. And we see it, these are kind of, I was like, how do I show this? Like, is this happening now? And it kind of is, right? Like, if you think about predictive search, that anticipates what you want to say or what you're thinking about. Like, that's a basic kind of thing. Apple Spotlight on iOS will give me suggestions based on my location, my context, what I'm using, time of day, etc. It'll say, hey, we think this is what you're after before you ask us what it is. Walking today, my watch said, hey, looks like you're on an outdoor walk, would you like me to record it? That's probably what I'm thinking about too, because the system's prompting me and thinking for me almost, rather than me going, I'm going to start a walk, I would like to start that now, please. And recently as well, Google Maps on CarPlay will anticipate the traffic ahead, anticipate where I've got to go, and offer me an alternative route. It won't change it. It's a conversation. Would you like this alternative route, yes or no? We think it's going to be better and save you 5 minutes. Would you like it? This is kind of what I'm talking about, this conversation between system and person. Did I miss anything? No, got it. Perfect. What I've been thinking about where this could go, right? If you've got a robot vacuum, you know you can go in and say start, you know you can go in and say schedule. But what if your robot vacuum said, hey, you're not home right now, you haven't used me in a while, want me to clean? What if it started prompting you rather than you prompting it? That's something that we could do today. What if a bank doesn't? No, go back. Should play, won't. What if the bank sort of said, hey, I know you, I know your spending habits, I know you're a really shitty saver, you've got car payments coming up, would you like me to start saving for you? Would you like me to start cutting that off? What if the system started being that helper to you? Banks probably won't do that. Sorry if anyone works for a bank, probably won't do that. But it would really help me as a customer, really help me sort of be ahead of where I need to be and the system providing that context for me. There it goes. Or driverless cars. So these are a thing. In San Francisco streets right now, you will freak out when you see driverless cars. They're a thing. What about when we've all got them, or some of us got them, and your driverless car says, hey, looks like you're finishing work, would you like me to be out the front? It kind of seems cool. But I think it's got to be conditional. It can't just be on a time. We're not talking about schedules. It's got to be conditional to your calendar's empty. It's the right time of day that you normally leave. You've shut your laptop or you're not doing something. You're on the move. Would you like me to come? They're the kind of conversations I'm talking about that you can accept or deny, because you don't want your car sitting out the front going, where are you? Hey, I'm here. That doesn't work. And I don't think it's far away between when that happens and cars become these personal transportation devices. Yeah, you could call that a car if you like, but that changes context to what you're doing. So from work, you might be able to extend your work day and have some meetings. If it's on the weekend and you've got kids like I do, it might be more an entertainment sort of trip. Like, that's really, really interesting to start thinking about how a car changes context to you, your family, or your needs, and it kind of prompts you to do so. And I've really liked this quote for a long time, and I've used it in almost every talk that I've done because it's really, really true. The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed yet, says William Gibson. If you think about that, all the tech I've just shown you exists. All the things that we're talking about today exist, they're there now. Another thing we've been talking about even today over breakfast is that we've had, I would argue, connected homes or connected devices, the Internet of Things, often called smart. I don't think they're smart, I think they're connected. And if we can start doing some of these things, that's when we're going to be smart. How does our homes respond to us in our context rather than be scheduled? And as I do that, I'll play this clip. If anyone's familiar, the starting credits of Back to the Future in '85, Doc Brown's got his lab all rigged up with timers, clocks, all things going off. Coffee machine starts pouring, the TV turns on, the radio's on, his toast pops up. This is all scheduling. This is all on a loop. This isn't anticipating a customer. This isn't anticipating anything other than the clock went off I go, I run this script, I do this thing, I loop it through. But we could end up with unintended consequences from doing that. And that's, I think, that anticipation, that being one step ahead of customer, we're talking about the opposite of this, because, punchlines coming up, we don't want dog food all over the floor. It's just, it's kind of messy. Probably stinks too. Coming back to conversational, do you want me to do this? How about this? I see, you need, etc. Would you like me to remind you? I think there's really something in that around how we prepare for Experience Next and be one step ahead of the customer. How do you do it? I'm getting to the end, promise. And we'll have a really fun conversation with two awesome people over there. You've got to be customer obsessed, and I don't mean human-centered design. I don't mean, but this is really dialing HCD up again. This is customer obsession, being a customer, knowing them better than they know themselves, which is really hard to do. Spending more time with customers than we do. I even posed, the original topic for this was, is human-centered design dead? And we evolved it to this, because I don't know, it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Are we as human-centered as we used to be, or should be? In order to do the stuff I've been talking about today, we have to be customer obsessed. We've also got to know the technology inside out, upside down, and every which way but loose. I feel like when I started in this industry, I was a web designer, and we did everything, right? If anyone's been around as long as I have, we did everything. There wasn't UX, there wasn't UI, there wasn't research, you did everything, even development. Or there was webmasters, remember them? They were fun, a webmaster. I feel like in the last few years, designers have got so specialised that often I see designers that don't know what they can do with technology, and when sort of discussing it, they're like, that's not my job, I'm just a designer. It's like, hang on, that is your job. You need to know how to get the most out of technology and where this is going. And lastly, some of the stuff I'm talking about is really scary stuff when you think about privacy, when you think about trust, when you're thinking about that value exchange between customer and brand. Not only because it's number 3 that there's 3 privacies, I just think it's incredibly important. And in the last 6 to 12 months, we've been working in some pretty interesting spaces when privacy is right up there, and it is incredibly important because we don't want data leaks, we don't want to be hacked, we want to be seen to provide great experiences and know that nothing's going to happen, and know that you're not going to sell data, etc., but all that stuff. They're the 3 things that I think about when we prepare for Experience Next, when we prepare for anticipation. Be customer obsessed, know your tech and push it as hard as you can until you break it, and then push it again, and make sure that privacy is at the core of this. Because the payoffs are huge. 91% at the front, results in 2.4 times greater year-on-year increase in revenue compared to brands that don't prioritise customer experience. 2.4 times year-on-year. Get you some of that. And now I reckon that's just the start. Like if you're pushing this, that'll be even more. I'm going to finish with this before we get into our panel, is that I strongly believe, and I think we at VML strongly believe, that the experience is the brand. Tom talked about it at the front around brand promise and experiences meeting that, and this is what it really means for me. You can have a great brand and a poor experience, and you can have a great experience and a poor brand. These things need to work hand in hand, hand in glove if you like, and I truly believe you can't have a great experience without a great... I think you can't have a great... Well, no, I don't think that at all. Let me think about that. No, you can have great experiences, but when you hit that 2.4, when you hit all of this, these things need to work incredibly close together. So, Thomas, what does it look like in practice? What have we been doing? Well, I'll answer that first.
I actually thought it was my go, so you carry on.
We've been working with Rip Curl. We've had Rip Curl as a partner of ours for 2014 and through today, and we've been working really closely with them for many years. It's not a mistake that I'm wearing Rip Curl gear, and so is Tom, if you can tell.
Because it's free.
And we've been working with them to update their surf tracking platform in a way that will allow us to stay one step ahead of their global surfing community, to serve, support, and essentially sell to them. Like, let's be honest, that's what we want to do. And live up to the brand promise that they have of being the ultimate surf company in all that they do. What have we been doing? You take it from here, because I'm tripping.
Mate, it's really good.
Thanks.
So this is the most unique client relationship I've ever been involved in 20 years in this industry, in that we're building out a whole digital ecosystem and surf tracking app that also has a subscription service in it. So thanks to my friend Rachel in the middle there, as our finance director, for trusting us to do this, which is almost crazy on her part. But from a relationship perspective, most agencies, 99% of all agency fees are billed on hours, on how many head hours you spend for a client and how chargeable you are. This is totally different. This is a profit share of us fronting the amount of development and then sharing in the spoils in perpetuity, which is just amazing. We get to iterate on an app and an experience and build out a subscription service of exclusive content that is basically a Strava for surfing. So Rip Curl have their own device, and I'm sure our guest that's coming on the stage in a second will talk about that, but it's such a unique opportunity.
Yeah, and when we're thinking about this being ahead of the customer, right, we're launching our, I guess, MVP, or Release 1 as we've been calling it, Horizon 1, pretty soon. And that's going to kind of be the basics. That's going to start to set the foundation for what we can do. It's going to do our tracking, build community, and start sharing, like, I guess, membership and loyalty through that as well. But what we're aiming to do, and where we're trying to take this, is how to use that data to improve surface performance. And we'll talk about that in a sec, but really what that looks like is, if we know you caught so many waves at this location, at this time, in these conditions, because all of that will be captured, and we know the forecast, we might be able to prompt you and say, hey, conditions are going to match exactly what you need. Get out there on Friday at 10 a.m. or whatever the time is. Get ready and go. That's just one thing that we're thinking about. Another thing is, what if we can see that a surfer's paddling performance isn't great and they're not as efficient as they could be. Maybe we can say, here's some upper body strength exercises, or here's a tutorial, or here's something you can go and do to get better and more efficient, or how to read the conditions better to use that to efficiently get out the back. So how do we start using data to support, grow, and essentially train a surfing community? And that's what we're thinking about. And if we come back to the point around sell rather than serve and support, maybe we know water temp. So maybe it's time for a new wetsuit, and we prompt you on that. We give you a deal, something like that, because you earn points for surfing with this product and through the membership. So there's some really interesting things that we're planning or thinking about, but don't want to, I guess, show too much too early, hey? Because we're going to live up to it. Over to you.
Thank you. So, to introduce our panel after all of that, you've already met Miles and his 300 children in love of NFL barbecues. So I'm going to jump straight to Michael Scott. Scotty, can you walk this way, please? Scotty is the Global Chief Customer Officer of Rip Curl. He has... He has an incredibly enviable CV of Nike, Virgin Australia, McDonald's, and Sweat, as well as Maya. It's impressive. I hope you live up to it. So he lives near the Rip Curl office near Bells Beach. Is a keen cyclist and a father of two, and is a good guy as well. So it is my absolute honour to introduce our second guest, though. No offence. Please come to the stage, Tyler. This is Tyler Wright. She is a Rip Curl pro surfer, a double world champion. I'm going to make my way through this whole bio because it's amazing. She's a double world champion in 2016 and 2017. At the age of just 14, I dread to think of what I was doing at 14, Tyler overtook a number of champions, some of whom were twice her age, to become the youngest ever winner of a championship tour event. She joined the World Surf League Championship Tour in 2011, has picked up 16 World Tour wins across the planet, from Hawaii to Brazil, the US, France, and here in Australia. Thank you both for joining us so much. So question time, and then we'll cut to the audience and ask some questions as well. Miles, great talk, thank you. I love the idea of anticipation over personalisation. What I would love you to explain, though, is how do you actually design for that, and does the tech actually meet it?
Actually. Well, Tom, glad you asked. No, in all seriousness, it is what I talked about in that. How do we design for it is being customer obsessed. How do we design for it is spending time with customers, really understanding what they need at what point, and understanding the variance in that, and trying to create, I guess, these multifaceted experiences that live up to that expectation of everyone. So it is those 3 points, and knowing the tech. Like I said, test the tech till it breaks is what I would like us to be doing, and I think we're going to do that pretty soon with Scotty. So I'm pretty excited about what the future holds. Not so excited for all of our PIA meetings.
We'll come to that at the end.
Yeah, okay.
We'll come to that at the end.
But super important. So yeah.
And Scotty, any builds on that?
I was really fortunate to spend time at Nike for 4 or 5 years, and we, as a company and as a brand, fundamentally focused on the voice of the athlete. So everything was about servicing the athlete. So any product innovation, any piece of content which was created, which was designed to either communicate utility or to inspire, was typically told through the lens or filter of an athlete based upon athlete insight. And so I think based upon that pretty amazing experience that I had there, I've tried to drag that through my career, and the most like brand and organisation that I think that I've spent time in since Nike is definitely Rip Curl, because the athletes are front and centre in and around what we do, and without athletes we're nothing. And so I think that's it's a fundamental before you even get to technology.
Yeah, right, thank you. And the surf tracking app that we spoke about before is your brainchild, so thank you for that. What do you believe this will do for Rip Curl as a business?
It's really exciting. It's also nerve-wracking as well, but we're on a journey with these guys, which has been exceptional so far. I mean, our vision as a brand is to be the ultimate surf company, and that doesn't mean the biggest, the most market share, the most profitable, the biggest sales. It's actually to be the brand that best services the needs and requirements of surfers. And if we do that, we do it consistently around the world, respecting geographical and cultural nuance, then we think we'll win. This particular device, I certainly wasn't the brainchild of it. It was launched about 10 years ago. In a rudimentary form. It was great. I mean, I think that in many ways we were ahead of Apple, and I don't say that to be funny or also to be arrogant, but we were ahead of the market at the time. So it was a device, hardware watch, which was designed to track your surfing behaviour. So how many waves you got, how long you're in the water, how big the swell was, how fast the wave was, and to then consolidate that and visualise that within an app. And it was amazing at the time. It was absolutely leadership. It was innovative, but the market shifted very quickly, and we just didn't keep up. We didn't have the expertise or competence within the business to use the first-party data which was collected, to analyse it and to enable personalisation or anticipation. And so it was sort of a little bit dormant. In fact, it was quite dormant for 8 or 9 years, and then I was fortunate enough to come into the organisation, and being a cyclist, it's one of my first loves, and being familiar with Strava and GPS and those sorts of things, I just thought it was just a screaming opportunity for us to get after and invest in. And so, long story short, we partnered with the crew here, and we've reimagined it. So we've introduced a whole bunch of new features which go beyond what is currently presented in market. And most of the new paid-for features, and also the reimagined or reinvigorated fundamental features, have been designed off the back of insight from athletes, and not just elite athletes, but also just run-of-the-mill surfers who love getting in the water, which is what we should be doing as a brand.
Absolutely. And cheeky plug, actually. If you sign up to the Rip Curly e-newsletter, you'll get to be able to download the app as soon as it's live. Okay, so to Tyler next. Tyler, I'd imagine anticipation is something you're incredibly adept at, considering you'd be thinking about the right surf conditions and what wave to catch. Do you feel like that's something of a sixth sense for you?
When it's applied in the water, yeah. So it's, I think when I think about anticipation in what I do, a lot of it is, I don't think the tech's out there to actually measure it if you look at tech, but in the sense of intuition and a lifetime spent of studying the ocean and how water moves and how the wind moves and how reef and sand and all the different components of it. Like, anticipation comes into a lot of it, and then also calculation and measured where you move on the bank, and also reef or in the water and how you move as well.
Yeah, awesome. And how much do you rely on data for your performance? How much do you use it?
I'm probably not the poster child for any tech at the moment, only because the tech that I kind of want and want to know isn't quite there yet. And we do have data analysts of like who will break down heats into like who caught waves on the average of how big and stuff like that. I'm coming more on board in the sense of if you look at it over a long period of time, and also the consistency of what I would like to reach. And I think I use it more in training at this time.
And that's what I've got up just behind you, is that little clip I talked about,
Yeah.
is how you're gathering data in training,
Yeah.
and using that to,
Yeah.
I guess, fill gaps and be better prepared.
Yeah.
So
in that sense, yes, like in training, I've applied that a lot through my training over the last few years. Just to adapt, and it is like kind of anticipating how my body needs to move and when it needs to move. So certain events require different twitch muscles or a different sort of mind frame or physical setup as well for each event, because there's a multitude of different skill sets. It is actually quite hard to measure what we do. And also getting the data points has also been hard. What's actually making you better and what is not. It is a really hard process to kind of analyze all of that.
So does some athletes and your competitors, you rely on data a lot more, would you say?
I think it's a new phase of surfing. I think surfing is still in its infancy. So I think we're at where technology and surfing right now, I think it's a really cool crossroad, because surfing, I don't think people have known what have made excellent surfers, like the best of the best, actually the best of the best. I don't think people have looked that hard. I don't think they've asked that many questions. And I think data's coming in now as well, like who is the most consistent in these conditions. But I think, and then also what training actually helps and what training doesn't, because you can see a lot of standard training out there, but you also want to be working smarter and not harder. So I still think we struggle, and I think we are in the infancy of a sport and technology where this is going to evolve drastically in the next decade. Where that leads will be very interesting, as technology advances as well.
It's been really interesting watching, again, just using the cycling analogy for a moment. It sort of feels like only 10 years ago when the older guys who were riding, we all had speed that you're going and perhaps cadence, so repetition of the pedal going around, and that's all they wanted. And then heart rate came in, and I remember the old salty cyclist going, don't need a fucking heart rate, what do you need your heart rate for? And then we've got GPS, and then we've got segments, and Strava has evolved, and I ride regularly with 60, 70, 80-year-olds, and they're hooked. Like, they're completely hooked up. They're measuring all of their data, they report back on it, they're sledging each other and stuff. So And I think that surfing is just, it's sitting behind that, and it's going to evolve, and so that's for the mainstream cyclist. But then in the context of what this one does, and also in cycling, exercise performance, exercise science, like it's a thing, like it's a real thing, as we all know, and we're playing a bit of catch up, I think, in the surfing industry.
I think we've got a long way to go to really quantify what we're actually doing. I think there's only, even what I see at the top level today, I still think it's a very basic level of understanding and application of knowledge and across multiple areas.
You mentioned that kind of technology isn't there yet. It doesn't really do what you want it to do. Is there anything you'd want it to do? Is there a gap it needs to fill?
One of the gaps that I like, again, there's multiple ones, but one of them, I think we mentioned it.
Yeah, we were talking about it yesterday.
Yeah,
yesterday. And this morning, a lot.
Yeah, a lot. But like for me personally, when anyone says about anticipation or what do we need next, like most of the time I'm like, can anyone figure out how much water's hitting me in the head or how much water's hitting my body? Because I think it's like 1 metric cube meter of water is about a ton. It's about a ton. So we have that landing on us all the time by multiples, and then we're like, if you think of like Chopu or the different locations and the different size, like that was for me one of the bigger things is it has a multiple, like my personal experience, I've had multiple concussions, I've had siblings that have had concussions, but we still don't know how much we're actually getting hit in the water, and like whether it's duck diving, whether that's we're bailing and just absolutely getting smoked, landing on the reef, or like slapping and whiplashing our necks. So I guess for me, like we spoke a bit about it.
Yeah, and then we started for the next 2 or 3 hours after we spoke yesterday, I looked it up. I reckon we can do it. So
Release 2 writes itself at this point, doesn't it?
Yeah. and 3 and probably 4. But it's really, really interesting. I guess my question then, and we haven't talked about this, so sorry. We're going to go. We said we were going to riff.
Yep.
What do you think about the product that we've created, the product that's been in market and that we are making better? What do you think that does for, I guess, non-elite athletes like yourself? Like, you know, someone that surfs 4 or 5 times a week, you know, is almost the Scotty of cycling, but, you know, the Scotty of surfing. What do you think that this data is going to mean for them?
Yeah, I think it potentially will make a lot of average surfers better.
That's the plan.
Look, and it's I say that, look, like it's one thing, it actually my brother-in-law surfs. He's a footballer, or that's what his chosen sport was. But I've known him since I was 16. And he came to us one day, and I've got 2 other professional siblings.
Yep.
All of us surf. We all know kind of what we're doing. And he came to us, and he's like, you know what? You'd think one of us would teach me how to surf, or how to surf better, or any sort of tips. He's like, I've been around for almost 15 years, and not one of yous have told me anything about how to surf better. And I was like, yeah.
And we're not. No.
Yeah, no. And it's just like randomly, and now obviously with our sport being elevated to a much more professional level with the Olympics, having a lot more people come in and ask questions and all these sort of things, and you're just like, we don't realize we kind of gatekeep the information. We don't mean to.
But yeah, and I think what I found really interesting that you said yesterday was that example of being a better paddler.
Oh yeah.
You even said that some surfers that you're like up against don't know how to paddle properly.
No, they don't. Like, and this is.
Do you want to talk about about that a little bit more?
So again, like at the elite level of surfing, and that's what I kind of said, I think surfing is still really in its infancy. I think there's so much development, so much understanding to what actually makes us great at it. And it does, like, we spend so much time paddling. We can paddle for multiple hours, 6, 7 hours at a time. It won't faze us. But when you look at paddling efficiency and paddling strokes, and when you look at how to paddle, not all surfers and not all elite athletes do it great. And there's a few that do it excellent, but they don't know what they do, and other surfers don't know what they do and how to get better at what they actually do to get better at paddling. And that's where Surfing Australia's come in and now doing a bunch of research on that, and got an Olympic swimmer who surfs come in and kind of help figure out what is the best stroke, what is the best training for this stroke,
Best efficiency, how to save energy.
how to save energy, how to be more efficient, and also just like, what do you do to get better at that?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot that I probably have never considered, in the sense of like, I think there's depending what age you start surfing, I think a lot of people just kind of like, oh yeah, you just watch it and then you just copy it. But there's no like, there's breakdowns now, but still it's varied and far and what's actually good.
Yeah. How hard is it? Hand over hand, right?
Yeah.
Tom's itching to ask a question.
I think I forgot a bit in the intro, and you touched on it then. The Olympics, which is, an amazing opportunity to go and represent your country at the Olympics. Paris as well.
Actually, it's not.
There's not much surfing in Paris.
No.
I wondered how much more think the tech or data or the professionalism will increase as you head into an Olympics, or do you think it's already there?
No, I think we're at crossroads of, we're a really young sport, and I know the sport's been around for a very long time, but we've had so many areas where we've had to come so far on to, and then too, like, I think in this space, I think there's a part of surfing that is to also get away. And I think that's one of the hard things when you're creating something, is like, one of those moments is to be Mother Nature. And so I think you're going to have a bit of like, there'll be a tension point at some point where people will be like, no, that's too much data. But at the same time, if you can make that data and help you be better and help the broader public be better, I think it actually does help us in the long run.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about if you thought that the data or the tech would get in the way, because when we were talking about different types of surfer, there's kind of people that want to be tracking every movement. But when we're designing the Apple Watch app to make it as subtle as possible, so it doesn't really distract, where you're not looking at your arm all the time. I think it's the same as sitting in your front room looking at your mobile phone all the time rather than engaging with your family. I realise that that's something that's really important, that we need to make sure it doesn't take over too much.
Yeah, I'd say that as the creators of these things is something that I would say would be an important thing to keep front of mind, in the sense of like, yes, these experiences are to be personalised, but it's also about connection and what you're actually doing in that present moment, and how do we benefit that, how do you support that, and how do you make that experience as the best as possible, and also
we talked a lot about that through the creation of the product. We took haptics out, so we were talking about, well, what if we tapped you on the wrist when you're leveled up or something? It's like, well, what if I'm on a wave and it's distracting? Or what can I do? What was the role of device? And we made it as simple as possible on the wrist. It's basically two interactions: start, stop, and I get a summary. That's it. Everything else is on phone. So exactly what you're talking about, thinking about the context and thinking about how to be there and be supportive, but get out of the way.
Yeah.
And it comes back to what I'm thinking about too. A good coach will do that, or a good caddy will do that.
Yeah.
A good coach and caddy will know when to step up and talk to you and be with you, and also know when to shut up and get out the back and let you do your thing. And that's really what we're talking about as we're crafting this. But Tyler mentioned the word tension, Scotty, and it's got me thinking. We've had a bit of it started early today too. About 7 a.m. we got a bit tense.
Where is this going?
You know where it's going. These two teamed up on me, tag team me, talking about how Aura was a great experience and the data was around anticipation and how they're using it. So I want to, I've conceded, yes it is. I'd like to ask, I think you're an Aura user as well.
Yeah.
All three of you talk about that experience for you and how Aura is helping you, I guess, get the sleep, the rest, etc. you need, and how it's preparing you for that, because it is conversational, which I only learnt today. I'm not an Aura user, sorry. But you guys are. Talk about that, because you were pretty strongly saying, mate, it's here. Talk to me about it.
Well, yeah, my experience with it's really, really positive. Does anyone else put up your hand if you're an Aura user? So what is Aura? The hell is it? So it's a ring. So there's a Whoop device as well. There's
I'm not
Aura
wearing
rings.
two
There's lots of different devices. Aura just happens to be one manifestation, I guess, of a product which tracks your sleep, your activity, your stress levels. And I've used a Whoop, I've used an Apple Watch. Personally, I love the Aura. I think it's more precise in terms of the data which it collects. I use it particularly around sleep. We have often sent texts to each other having a competition who got the best sleep overnight. It gives a level of dimensions around the quality of sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep, duration of sleep, of course, your heart rate, your HRV between heartbeats. And this morning after a big night last night where I drank too much alcohol, my sleep levels were shit house. My recovery levels were shit house. And I've got a push notification since that sort of download this morning saying, hey, you might want to look at alcohol intake and duration of sleep and time that you went to bed. So it's getting there. Like I feel like Aura's getting there. It's not to the levels that you've been speaking about, but I think it's making great inroads.
Yeah, and first of all, you should hear these guys talking. Like, what was your sleep like? Show me yours. Oh, look at this. It's like, come on, man. It's fun to watch for a second. But also, the stuff that we were talking about, I was asking questions around if you exert too much energy in a day, will it tell you to get more sleep that night? And it does. I was kind of going a little bit further and going, imagine your calendar said you're going to San Francisco on a flight, and it said, hey, we're going to start adjusting your sleep pattern so your jet lag's reduced. Like, that's the kind of thing that I think is really cool, because all the data's there. How do we get it to start helping you and assisting you going that little bit further? I think that's when it gets cool. It's cool now, I guess.
I am addicted to it. Like my sleep was 78% last night, and my recovery is 97%. Go figure. I just know but we do talk about it a lot. It's handy, but it has told me to go for a run, so downside. My next question, actually, you touched on privacy earlier.
Yes.
And it's in designing this experience and many others, privacy becomes a big thing. I think there's kind of that, and you also touched on creepiness, and there's a big difference between those two things, but one's about being hacked and the other's about just not revealing too much data and overusing the data. As we go through the experience, I just want to, like, Scotty, how do you think we should design for experiences when we have to consider all those privacy points?
Yeah, the way that I encourage my team to think around this topic is to ensure that the filter being used is delivery of value to consumer. So if they're genuinely focused on delivering value, whether it's inspiration or utility or whatever and however, that's critically important for the CX team or the brand team, marketing team. And then we need to lean on the experts around us to then guide us. But I really believe that if you're not driven by the transaction or the sale and you stay quite pure to delivery of value, you can find yourself in the right place most of the time. The world's changing so quickly, we all know that, with legislation, and there's terrific variance and difference between countries and legislation and maturity around this sort of thing, but it's a thing, like it's a real thing. It's holding us up with what we're doing, as we know, we acknowledge that, but staying pure to delivery of value, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah. And Miles, any builds?
The only thing that I have been thinking about, and we've been speaking a lot, unsurprisingly, getting ready for today, is encouraging teams to have a yes and kind of attitude rather than a no but. No, you can't do that but, or even just a no, and hitting a brick wall. So, hey, we want to do X, how do we do that? Well, here are the risks, but if we do this, we put that in place, or we spend the time here and we invest over there, then we can do that. All right, great. So it's really about having that yes and attitude and moving forward and doing everything you just said, Scotty, being really conscious about what we're asking for, why we're asking for, and ensuring that it's a clear value exchange, right? Trust comes into all of this. I'm going to give you this data because I trust them and I'm going to get a great experience back. There's a value exchange in that. But yeah, yes and is the simple answer to that question.
Awesome. That actually is the end of my questions, so thank you, all of you. I'm going to throw to the crowd. We have a microphone at the back. Please do put your hand up like John is demonstrating, and ask any questions, please.
Yeah, just a quick one around John Bird. Great presentation, thank you very much. Just a quick one around loyalty, rewards, ongoing connection. I mean, that's part of the experience, isn't it? Without revealing too much, maybe. I mean, how are you thinking about that? And be interesting from Tyler's point of view too, whether that's part of the equation as well, a reward for using it on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I mean, we always use the word membership rather than loyalty. I feel like words do matter, I think. Loyalty feels very transactional, whereas membership feels very community and connection. That's certainly how we think about it. We're not pure to it all the time, and I'm sure that if you look at our website or you join up, we're imperfect and we're getting better as we go. The way that we frame membership within our organisation, we've rolled out this thing called Club Rip Curl, and the USP is when you surf, you get rewarded if you're a surfer, but if you're just a shopper and a lover of the surf culture which you want to buy into, you get points when you transact as well. We sort of call Club Rip Curl the club, and we call this search GPS proposition the booth within the club. So if you've got this hardware which we're designing and partnering with Apple on with an app, you have a far more intimate relationship with the Rip Curl brand. Like, you're really close to it. You either spend a lot of money on our hardware, or you've invested a lot of money into an Apple Watch then to get the app to use it within the surfing context. So you can have a varying level of a relationship with us. We don't expect, nor should we, that everyone's going to have an intimate relationship with us, but it's really important for us to have intimate relationships with surfers who we're on this planet to serve, essentially. That was a really long-winded answer. I'm not sure whether I answered your question, but that was sort of... Yeah. Yeah. Anyone can come into the club. Anyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome, in fact. But there's a varying level of relationship which you have, and you pay more to be in the booth, of course. And when you do pay to be in the booth, you get better features.
Yeah, I don't get that analogy either. Don't worry. Every time he talks about this club, I'm like, what?
Well, no. Sort of works.
I get it. I do.
Thanks.
Any other questions? That might be us then. Oh, we've got one more. Neil's in.
Just going to ask Tyler where your favourite break is around the world. What's top of the list?
There's multiple. It just depends. Like, you can never go past like the memories when you were a child growing up, learning to surf. You're with your friends, you're with family. One of the most world-class waves still that I've had traveling the planet. So that's probably down on the south coast. Otherwise, there's fabulous waves everywhere, though. There really is, yeah.
Any more for any more? Cool. All right, then. Well, thank you all. There's, if you leave your headphones on your seat, that'd be great. And then there's food and drink outside. Thank you so much.
Thank you.